I still remember the way Sarah looked at me that morning, standing there in her wedding dress, tears streaming down her face. She whispered the words that would haunt me for years. "Michael, I can't do this. I'm so sorry." The church was filled with 200 guests. My mother, Mrs. Johnson, had spent months planning every detail. My sister Emily had flown in from Seattle. Everyone was waiting, and Sarah just walked out. I watched her gather up the train of her white dress and run down the aisle. The heavy church doors slammed behind her with a sound that echoed through my soul. Everyone was staring at me, whispering. My best man, my older brother David, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Mike, what do you want to do?" What did I want to do? I wanted to chase after her. I wanted to demand answers, but instead, I just stood there, frozen, watching the most important person in my life disappear from my world. I let her go. I didn't fight for her. I didn't run after her. You know that feeling when your entire world collapses in a single moment, when everything you thought you knew turns out to be a lie? That was me, standing at that altar, realizing that maybe those vows were never meant for her at all. But this was just the beginning. Let me tell you about the man I was before that day. My name is Michael Thompson, and I was 28 years old when my life fell apart. I worked in marketing for a tech company downtown. Nothing too exciting, but it paid well enough to afford the life Sarah and I had planned together. I'm what people call a nice guy. You know the type, always trying to make everyone happy, never wanting to rock the boat. My mother raised me to be respectful, to treat women well, to believe that if you just love someone enough, everything will work out. Growing up, I was close to my family. Mrs. Johnson, my mom, worked as a nurse for 30 years before retiring. She's traditional, the kind of woman who believes in marriage, commitment, and Sunday dinners together. My dad passed away when I was in college, so Mom leaned on us kids pretty heavily. My sister Emily is 4 years younger than me. She's always been the sunshine in our family, optimistic, supportive, the type of person who believes in fairy tale endings. She loved Sarah from the moment I brought her home. Then there's my older brother David, 2 years older, charming, successful in real estate. David has always been the golden child, star athlete in high school, popular, confident with women. Where I was steady and reliable, David was exciting and unpredictable. Mom always said we balanced each other out perfectly. I met Sarah 3 years ago at a coffee shop near my office. She was sitting alone, reading a book, and when she looked up and smiled at me, I swear my heart stopped. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, long auburn hair, green eyes, and this laugh that made everyone around her want to be part of whatever was making her so happy. Sarah came from money. Her father, Mr. Williams, owns a successful import business. They lived in one of those huge houses in the suburbs where everything is perfect and pristine. Her family had certain expectations about who she should marry, what kind of life she should live. But she chose me. At least, I thought she did. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. I saved up for months to buy her the ring she deserved, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that cost me 3 months' salary. When I got down on one knee in the park where we had our first official date, she said yes immediately. She was crying happy tears, and I thought I was the luckiest man in the world. We spent the next year planning our dream wedding. Sarah wanted everything to be perfect. We looked at venues, tasted cakes, chose flowers. Her best friend Jessica helped with all the details. I just went along with whatever made Sarah happy. Looking back now, I realize I never really knew what was going on in Sarah's head. I was so focused on making her happy that I never stopped to ask if she was truly happy. I never questioned why she sometimes seemed distant, why she would get quiet when I talked about our future, why she never seemed as excited about the wedding as everyone else. I should have seen the signs, but I was blind, completely and utterly blind. Little did Michael know what was coming. Sarah Williams was everything I thought I wanted in a wife. She was 26, intelligent, beautiful, and came from the kind of family that seemed to have it all figured out. Her father, Mr. Williams, was a stern businessman who spoke in numbers and profit margins. Her mother was involved in every charity organization in town. They lived in a world where appearances mattered more than anything else. Sarah had graduated from a prestigious university with a degree in art history. She worked part-time at an art gallery downtown, more as a hobby than a necessity. Money was never a concern for her family. They had the kind of wealth that made my middle-class background feel inadequate sometimes. But Sarah never made me feel less than. At least, not in the beginning. She would come to my small apartment and cook dinner with me, laughing when I burned the garlic bread or forgot to buy wine. She fit perfectly into my family gatherings, charming my mother with compliments about her cooking and listening patiently to Emily's stories about her college adventures. Everyone loved Sarah. My co-workers envied me. My friends couldn't believe I'd landed such a catch. Even David, who was usually critical of my girlfriends, approved of Sarah immediately. "She's a keeper, little brother," he told me after the first time he met her. "Don't screw this one up." Sarah's best friend Jessica was always around. Jessica was 27, single, and worked as a marketing coordinator at a fashion company. She was the type of friend who knew all of Sarah's secrets, who she called when she needed advice, who helped her pick out outfits for important events. Jessica seemed to like me well enough, but sometimes I caught her looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, like she knew something I didn't, like she was waiting for something to happen. The warning signs were there, but I ignored them. Like the way Sarah would sometimes go quiet during dinner, staring off into space like she was somewhere else entirely. When I'd ask what she was thinking about, she'd just smile and say, "Nothing important." Or how she never wanted to talk about the future beyond our wedding day. Whenever I brought up where we might want to live after we were married, or whether we wanted kids right away, she'd change the subject. There were phone calls she would take in private, stepping out onto the balcony or into the bathroom. "Just Jessica," she'd explain, but something about her body language told me it wasn't always Jessica. The biggest red flag should have been her relationship with her family. Mr. Williams was always polite to me, but I could tell he didn't think I was good enough for his daughter. He never said it directly, but the way he talked about Sarah's future and the importance of making smart choices made it clear that I wasn't his first choice for a son-in-law. Sarah's mother was warmer, but even she sometimes made comments about how different our backgrounds were, how challenging it could be when couples came from such different worlds. But Sarah always defended me. She would shut down any criticism from her parents, hold my hand tighter when they made their subtle digs, look me in the eye and tell me she loved me exactly as I was. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. The night before our wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner at her parents' country club. Everything was perfect, the flowers, the food, the champagne. Sarah looked radiant in her navy blue dress, smiling and laughing with all our guests. But when I caught her eye across the room, something felt off. She looked sad, nervous, like she was about to do something terrible. I should have pulled her aside then, should have asked her what was wrong, really wrong, should have insisted we talk, just the two of us, about whatever was eating at her. Instead, I just smiled back and raised my glass when her father gave a toast about new beginnings and the importance of family. But Sarah had a secret. "Let me tell you about my family, because understanding them is crucial to understanding how everything fell apart. My mother, Mrs. Johnson, is 55 years old and has always been the heart of our family. After my father died of a heart attack when I was 22, she threw herself into making sure David, Emily and I stayed close. She's the type of mother who still calls every Sunday, who remembers every birthday and anniversary, who worries if you don't answer your phone. She adored Sarah from day one. "That girl is going to make you so happy, Michael," she used to say. Mom saw in Sarah everything she wanted from me: stability, beauty, a good family background. She spent weeks helping plan the wedding, choosing flowers, coordinating with the caterer, making sure every detail was perfect for her future daughter-in-law. Emily, my younger sister, was 24 and working as a teacher in Seattle. She's always been my cheerleader, the one person in the world who thinks I can do no wrong. She took vacation time to come help with wedding preparations, staying in my apartment for 2 weeks before the big day. "I'm so happy for you, Michael," she told me the night before the wedding. "Sarah is perfect for you. You guys are going to have the most beautiful life together." Emily had spent hours with Sarah, helping her with last-minute wedding details, listening to her talk about married life, sharing stories about what it was like growing up with me as a big brother. They had become close, real friends, not just future sisters-in-law, which made what happened next so much worse. Then there's David. My older brother has always been complicated. At 30, he was successful, charming, and had a way with women that I never understood. He could walk into a room and have every woman's attention within minutes. He was the star athlete in high school, the guy everyone wanted to be friends with. The one who always seemed to get what he wanted. David worked in real estate and made good money selling luxury homes to wealthy clients. He drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, and dated a different beautiful woman every few months. Never anything serious, never anyone he brought home to meet mom. "I'm not the settling down type," he used to say. "That's more your speed, little brother." But David liked Sarah, maybe a little too much. I started noticing it about 6 months before the wedding, the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching, how he always seemed to find excuses to stop by when he knew she'd be at my apartment, the way he laughed a little too hard at her jokes, complimented her a little too often. Sarah was always friendly with David, but nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself. There was this one night, about 3 months before the wedding, when David came over for dinner. Sarah had made her famous pasta dish, and we were all sitting around my small dining table, talking and laughing. David was telling some story about a difficult client, making Sarah laugh until tears came to her eyes. I went to the kitchen to get more wine, and when I came back, David was showing Sarah something on his phone. They were sitting close together, her head nearly touching his shoulder as they looked at the screen. When they saw me, they quickly moved apart. "Just showing her pictures from my trip to Napa," David explained. "It looked beautiful," Sarah added, "but she wouldn't meet my eyes. I should have trusted my instincts, should have asked more questions, should have paid attention to the way the energy in the room changed whenever David and Sarah were together. But I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure boyfriend who couldn't trust his own brother. David had never betrayed me before. Why would he start now?" The week before the wedding, David offered to help with some last-minute errands. "You've got enough on your plate," he said. "Let me handle picking up the tuxedos and coordinating with the groomsmen." Sarah seemed grateful for the help. "Your brother is so thoughtful," she told me. "You're lucky to have someone who cares about you so much." Lucky? Yeah, I felt really lucky. The morning of the wedding, David was the first to arrive at the church. He helped me with my tie, made jokes to calm my nerves, told me how proud he was to be my best man. "This is your day, little brother," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Everything is going to be perfect." He was right about one thing. It was going to be perfect, perfectly devastating. Then David entered the picture. The first real crack in my perfect world came about 2 months before the wedding. Sarah and I were having dinner at her parents' house, one of those formal Sunday dinners where everyone dressed up and used the good china. Mr. Williams was talking about business, as usual. Something about expanding his import operations, taking on new partners, making strategic moves for the future. Sarah was quiet throughout dinner, pushing food around on her plate without really eating. "Sarah seems distracted lately," her mother mentioned as we cleared the dishes. "Is everything all right with the wedding planning, dear?" "Everything's fine, Mom," Sarah replied, but her voice sounded strained. That night, as I drove Sarah back to her apartment, she was unusually quiet. When I asked if something was bothering her, she just sighed and said, "I'm just tired. Planning a wedding is more stressful than I thought it would be." I reached over and took her hand. "Hey, we don't have to have a big wedding if you don't want to. We could elope, just the two of us. What matters is that we're together." Sarah looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like she was seeing me for the first time, or maybe seeing me clearly for the first time. "Michael," she said softly, "do you ever wonder if we're making the right choice?" My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you ever think about whether we're getting married because we love each other, or because it's what everyone expects us to do?" I pulled the car over and turned to face her. "Sarah, I'm marrying you because I love you, because I can't imagine my life without you. Is that not how you feel?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the street lights. Finally, she turned back to me and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course that's how I feel," she said. "I'm sorry, I'm just being silly. Pre-wedding jitters, you know?" I wanted to push harder, to ask more questions, but I was afraid of what I might hear, so I just kissed her forehead and told her everything would be fine. But things weren't fine. A few weeks later, I decided to surprise Sarah at the art gallery where she worked. I brought her favorite coffee and a muffin from the bakery she loved. When I walked in, I heard her voice coming from the back office, but she wasn't alone. "I can't keep doing this," she was saying. "It's not fair to him." "Life isn't fair, sweetheart," a man's voice replied. "You have to think about what you really want." I froze. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. "But he loves me," Sarah said, and I could hear tears in her voice. He's a good man, he deserves better than this. Then give him better, the man said. Make a choice, Sarah, you can't have both. I cleared my throat loudly and called out, "Hello? Sarah, are you here?" There was a moment of silence, then Sarah appeared from the back office, her face flushed and her eyes red. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you," I said, holding up the coffee. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, just a client, he was asking about commissioning a piece." I looked toward the back office, but whoever had been there was gone. There was a back exit through the storage room, someone could have easily slipped out that way. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You look upset." "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Just a difficult client, you know how it is." But I didn't know how it was, because Sarah had never mentioned having difficult clients before, because the conversation I'd overheard didn't sound like it was about art at all. That night, Sarah was distant again. She said she had a headache and went to bed early. I lay awake next to her, listening to her breathe, wonders of shores, ring what was happening to us. The next morning, I woke up to find Sarah already dressed and ready to leave. "Where are you going so early?" I asked. "Meeting Jessica for brunch," she said, not looking at me. "Wedding planning stuff." But when I called the restaurant later to see if I could join them, they told me no reservation had been made under Sarah's name or Jessica's. That's when I started to realize that the woman I was about to marry was keeping secrets from me, big secrets. This changed everything between them. You know that feeling when you start noticing things you should have seen all along, when the small inconsistencies begin adding up to something much bigger and more terrifying than you ever imagined? That's where I found myself 6 weeks before my wedding. Sarah's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would disappear for hours at a time, claiming she was running wedding errands or meeting with vendors. But when I offered to come along, she always had an excuse for why I couldn't join her. "The florist prefers to work with just the bride," she'd say. Or, "Jessica is handling the dress alterations, you can't see the dress before the wedding anyway." I started paying closer attention to the little things, the way she would quickly hide her phone screen when I walked into the room. How she began taking longer showers, sometimes humming songs I'd never heard her sing before. The new perfume she started wearing, something expensive and unfamiliar. My mother noticed too. "Sarah seems different lately," she mentioned during one of our Sunday dinners. "More distant. Is everything all right between you two?" I assured her everything was fine, but inside, I was falling apart. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. I had finished work early and decided to surprise Sarah at her apartment. I used the key she'd given me months ago and let myself in, planning to cook dinner for her as a surprise. That's when I heard voices coming from her bedroom. My blood turned to ice. I stood in her hallway, listening to my fiancé's laughter mixing with a man's deeper chuckles. The sound of someone, falling onto her bed. I should have walked away, should have left and confronted her later, should have given her a chance to explain. Instead, I crept closer to the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. What I saw destroyed me. Sarah was sitting on a bed, fully clothed, but she wasn't alone. A man was lying next to her, his head in her lap while she ran her fingers through his hair. They were looking at something on a laptop together, intimate and comfortable in a way that spoke of familiarity, of routine. I couldn't see the man's face from where I stood, but I could see enough. Dark hair, expensive shirt, the kind of watch that costs more than I make in 3 months. "You make this so much harder than it needs to be," Sarah was saying softly. "Good," the man replied. "Easy has never been our style." Sarah laughed, the same laugh that had made me fall in love with her 3 years ago. But now it was directed at someone else, someone who clearly knew her in ways I was beginning to realize I never had. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they would hear it. I made it to the kitchen before my legs gave out, and I had to grip the counter to keep from falling. That's when I heard footsteps coming down the hall. "I should go," the man's voice said. "Don't want to risk him showing up." "He won't," Sarah replied. "He's working late tonight. Big presentation tomorrow." She was right. I had told her about the presentation, had told her I'd probably be at the office until at least 9 o'clock. I heard the front door open and close, and then Sarah was calling my name. "Michael, what are you doing here?" I turned around, trying to compose my face into something that wouldn't give away what I'd just witnessed. Finished early, I managed to say. Thought I'd surprise you. Sarah's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, guilt, fear, and then something that looked almost like relief. That's sweet, she said, but her voice sounded off. I was just taking a nap. Long day at the gallery. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We had dinner together that night, making small talk about the wedding, about work, about nothing that mattered. Sarah seemed more relaxed than she had in weeks, almost giddy. She kept touching my hand, smiling at me, acting like the woman I'd fallen in love with. It was like she was relieved about something, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. That night, as Sarah slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of what I'd seen. Who was he? How long had this been going on, and why was Sarah still planning to marry me if she was clearly involved with someone else? I thought about confronting her, demanding answers, but part of me was terrified of what I might learn. Part of me preferred the uncertainty to the devastation of knowing the truth. So I did what I always did when faced with conflict. I buried my head in the sand and hoped everything would somehow work out. But the worst was yet to come. I need to tell you about the night that changed everything, the night I discovered that my own brother had been lying to me for months. It was 2 weeks before the wedding. Sarah had been acting strange all day, jumping every time her phone buzzed, checking her reflection in every mirror we passed. We were supposed to have dinner with my family, Mom, Emily and David, but at the last minute, Sarah said she wasn't feeling well. I think I'm coming down with something, she said, pressing her hand to her forehead dramatically. I don't want to get everyone sick right before the wedding. I offered to stay home with her, but she insisted I go. Your mom has been looking forward to this dinner all week. Besides, Emily's leaving for Seattle tomorrow. You should spend time with her. So, I went to dinner alone, making excuses for Sarah's absence. Mom was disappointed but understanding. Emily was worried about Sarah's health. And David seemed relieved. She's probably just stressed about the wedding, he said. Women get crazy about these things. After dinner, I was walking to my car when I realized I'd left my wallet inside. I let myself back into Mom's house quietly, not wanting to interrupt if she was cleaning up. That's when I heard David on the phone in the living room. No, he's gone, David was saying in a low voice. Yeah, she played it perfectly. He bought the whole sick act. I froze in the hallway, straining to hear more. Look, I know this is complicated, David continued, but it's almost over. 2 more weeks and we can stop pretending. My blood turned cold. I crept closer, staying hidden behind the wall. Sarah, you have to trust me on this. I've been handling Michael for months now. He doesn't suspect anything. Sarah, he was talking to Sarah. I know it's hard. David's voice was soft, intimate. I know you feel guilty, but we both knew this was the only way. After the wedding, when everything settles down, we can figure out how to tell him. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. Of course I love you, David said. I've loved you since the first day Michael brought you home. You know that. The phone call ended, and I heard David moving around the living room. I quickly grabbed my wallet from the kitchen counter and slipped out the back door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get my car keys out of my pocket. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. My brother, my best man, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, was having an affair with my fiancée. But it was worse than that. They were planning something that involved waiting until after the wedding. I drove around for hours that night, trying to piece together the timeline. When had it started? How long had they been lying to me? And what exactly were they planning to do after I married Sarah? When I finally went home, Sarah was asleep in my bed, looking peaceful and innocent. I stood in the doorway watching her, this woman I thought I knew, and realized I didn't know her at all. The next morning, Sarah was back to her normal self, affectionate, excited about the wedding, talking about our honeymoon plans. If I hadn't overheard that phone call, I never would have suspected anything. But now I was seeing everything differently, the way Sarah's face lit up whenever David walked into a room. How David always seemed to know exactly what to say to make her laugh. The inside jokes they shared that I was never part of. How had I been so blind? I started watching them more carefully during family gatherings, the way David's hand lingered on Sarah's back when he hugged her goodbye, how Sarah's eyes would search for David's whenever she told a story, like his approval was the only one that mattered. They were careful, I'll give them that. They never did anything obvious when I was around. But once you know what to look for, the signs are everywhere. The week before the wedding, I confronted David directly. "We need to talk," I told him after Mom's rehearsal dinner speech practice. "Sure, little brother, what's on your mind?" We walked out to Mom's backyard, the same place where we used to play catch when we were kids. "I know," I said simply. David's face didn't change. "Know what?" "About you and Sarah." For just a moment, David's mask slipped. I saw surprise, then fear, then something that looked almost like relief. "Michael, How long?" I interrupted. David was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ground. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something I'd never seen before. Guilt. 6 months, he said quietly. 6 months. Sarah and I had been engaged for 8 months. They'd been having an affair for most of our engagement. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. David ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture he'd done since we were kids when he was in trouble. "It just happened, Mike. We didn't plan it. We tried to stop it, tried to stay away from each other, but what? But we fell in love." The words hit me like a physical blow. They fell in love, while she was engaged to me, while I was planning our future together. "So why is she still marrying me?" I asked. David looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. "You'll have to ask her that." What Michael discovered shocked him. The night before my wedding, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed at Mom's house. Sarah and I had decided to spend our last night as unmarried people apart, following tradition, staring at the ceiling and trying to decide what to do with the knowledge I carried. I knew my brother was in love with my fiancée. I knew she was in love with him. I knew they'd been having an affair for 6 months. But I still didn't understand why Sarah was going through with the wedding. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for some water. Emily was already there, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked with a gentle smile. I sat down across from her. Emily had always been my confessor, the one person in the family I could talk to about anything. I said carefully, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think Sarah really wants to marry me?" Emily's expression grew concerned. "Michael, what kind of question is that? Of course she wants to marry you. She said yes, didn't she?" "But does she seem happy to you, about the wedding, I mean?" Emily considered this for a moment. "She seems nervous, but that's normal, isn't it? Getting married is a big step." I nodded, but something in Emily's voice told me she'd noticed something too. "Why are you asking me this?" she said softly. I almost told her everything right then. About the phone call I'd overheard, about the affair, about the lies that had been building for months. But Emily idolized our family. She believed in love and marriage and happy endings. How could I destroy that for her? "Just pre-wedding jitters," I said. "Forget I mentioned it." But Emily was studying my face with the intensity she usually reserved for her most challenging students. "Michael," she said slowly, "is there something you're not telling me?" Before I could answer, we heard footsteps in the stairs. David appeared in the kitchen, looking as sleepless as I felt. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Sorry, didn't know anyone else was up." The three of us sat there in uncomfortable silence. Emily kept looking between David and me like she could sense the tension, but didn't understand its source. "Well," she finally said, standing up, "I should try to get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." After she left, David and I were alone. "We should talk," he said. "There's nothing to talk about." "Michael, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "Explain how you've been screwing my fiancée behind my back for 6 months. Explain how you've been lying to my face every day. Explain how you can stand up as my best man tomorrow knowing what you've done." David flinched. "It's not that simple." "Then make it simple for me." David sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his 30 years. "Sarah never meant for this to happen," he said quietly. "She loves you, Michael, she really does. But she loves you more. It's not about more or less, it's different." I stared at my brother, this man I'd looked up to my entire life, and felt something inside me break. "So why is she marrying me tomorrow?" David was quiet for a long moment. "Because she thinks it's the right thing to do, because she made a commitment to you, because she doesn't want to hurt you." "And you're okay with that? You're okay with her marrying me when she's in love with you?" No, David said, his voice breaking. I'm not okay with it. I hate it. I've been trying to convince her to call off the wedding for weeks. But she won't. She says she can't. That too many people are counting on this wedding, that it would destroy too many relationships, hurt too many people. I laughed bitterly. So she's going to marry me to avoid hurting people? How thoughtful of her. Michael, get out. What? Get out of this house. You're not my best man anymore. You're not my brother anymore. Just get out. David's face crumpled. Michael, please, we can work through this. We're family. Family doesn't do this to each other. David stood up slowly, like an old man. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. After he left, I sat alone in Mom's kitchen until sunrise, wondering if I should call off the wedding myself. But every time I thought about picking up the phone, I imagined the disappointment on Mom's face, the embarrassment Sarah would feel, the 200 guests who would be left wondering what happened. So I decided to go through with it. I would marry Sarah and we would figure out the rest later. I had no idea that Sarah had already made a different choice. Then David revealed the truth. The morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling like I was preparing for my own execution. I'd gotten maybe 2 hours of sleep, and every muscle in my body ached with tension. Mom was already up, bustling around the kitchen in her bathrobe, making coffee and toast for everyone. She was so excited she was practically vibrating with energy. "This is it, sweetheart," she said, giving me a huge hug. "Your big day. I'm so proud of you, Michael. You and Sarah are going to be so happy together." If only she knew. Emily came downstairs looking beautiful in her bridesmaid dress, a soft lavender color that Sarah had chosen because it complemented Emily's complexion perfectly. "Where's David?" Emily asked, looking around the kitchen. "He had some last-minute best man duties to take care of," I lied smoothly. "He'll meet us at the church." But I knew David wouldn't be there. After our conversation last night, I wasn't even sure if he'd show up at all. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Getting dressed, pinning boutonnieres, making sure everyone had their transportation to the church figured out. Mom kept taking pictures of everything, wanting to document every moment of Michael's special day. At 10 a.m., I got a text from Sarah. "Good morning, my future husband. I love you." I stared at that message for a long time, trying to figure out what she meant by it. Did she really love me? Or was this just her way of easing her conscience before she went through with a marriage she didn't really want? I texted back, "Love you too, see you at the altar." By 11 a.m., we were at the church. The photographer was already there, taking pictures of the groomsmen getting ready. I kept glancing toward the door, waiting for David to show up, but he never did. "Where's your brother?" asked my friend Jake, who I'd asked to step in as best man at the last minute. "Running late," I said. Family emergency." At 11:30, the wedding coordinator came to check on us. "Gentlemen, we're 30 minutes away from showtime. Everyone ready?" I wasn't ready. I would never be ready for this. At 11:45, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was David. "Michael," he said, and I could hear traffic in the background. "I need to tell you something." "Where are you?" "I'm at the airport. I'm flying to Chicago for a few days. I can't watch you marry her knowing what I know." "David." "But there's something else, something you need to know before you walk down that aisle." My heart started pounding. "What?" "Sarah called me this morning. She's having second thoughts." "What kind of second thoughts?" "She's scared, Michael, scared that she's making a mistake, scared that she's going to hurt you even more by going through with this." I closed my eyes. "Did you tell her to call it off?" There was a long pause. "I told her to follow her heart." "And what did her heart tell her?" "I don't know, she hung up on me." At that moment, the wedding coordinator knocked on the door. "Gentlemen, it's time." I hung up on David without saying goodbye. As I walked toward the front of the church, I saw all the faces I'd known my whole life. Mom, crying happy tears in the front row, Emily, beaming at me from her place at the altar. Sarah's parents, looking proud and elegant in their expensive clothes. And then I saw Sarah. She was standing at the back of the church with her father, looking absolutely stunning in her white dress. But when our eyes met, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Terror. Absolute, complete terror. She looked like a woman walking to her own execution. The music started, and Sarah began walking down the aisle toward me. With each step she took, I could see her becoming paler, more frightened. By the time she reached the altar, she was shaking. The officiant began the ceremony, but I wasn't listening to his words. I was watching Sarah's face, seeing the internal battle playing out in her expressions. When we got to the vows, Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. She was crying, but not happy tears. These were tears of desperation, of regret, of someone who knew she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. And that's when she looked at me with those green eyes I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago and whispered the words that would haunt me forever. "Michael, I can't do this. I'm so sorry." Michael couldn't believe what he heard. The silence in that church was deafening, 200 people holding their collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Sarah stood there in her beautiful white dress, tears streaming down her face, her bouquet of white roses trembling in her hands. "I can't," she whispered again, and this time her voice carried to the back of the church. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I'm so sorry." I felt like I was watching everything from outside my own body. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "Sarah," I said quietly, reaching for her hand. "It's okay. It's just nerves. We can take a minute." "No," she said, pulling her hand away. "It's not nerves. It's not cold feet. I can't marry you knowing what I know about myself." The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we could take a brief recess." "No," Sarah said more firmly. "I need to say this now, before I lose my courage." She turned to face the congregation, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I am so sorry to everyone who came here today. I'm sorry for wasting your time, for causing this embarrassment, for being a coward." I heard my mother gasp from the front row. I saw Emily's hand fly to her mouth in shock. Sarah turned back to me, her green eyes swimming with tears. "Michael, you are the best man I know. You're kind and generous and patient, and you deserve so much better than this. You deserve someone who can give you all of her heart, not just the parts that are convenient." "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm talking about the fact that I've been lying to you, to myself, to everyone. I thought I could go through with this. I thought I could make it work through sheer force of will. But standing here, looking at you, knowing what you're expecting from this marriage, I can't do it." The church was so quiet I could hear people breathing. "I love you," Sarah continued, "but I'm not in love with you, not the way you deserve to be loved, not the way a wife should love her husband." Each word felt like a knife to my chest. Even though I knew about David, even though I knew about the affair, hearing her say it out loud in front of everyone we knew was devastating. "Sarah," I said, my voice cracking, "we can work through this. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together." She shook her head sadly. "No, we can't, because the problem isn't something we can fix. The problem is that my heart belongs to someone else." A murmur went through the congregation. I heard someone gasp, someone else whisper, "Oh my God." "I never meant for it to happen," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "I tried to fight it. I tried to pretend it wasn't real, but I can't keep lying anymore. I can't marry you when I'm in love with someone else." "Who?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Sarah's face crumpled. I can't say. Not here. Not like this." But I already knew. And apparently, so did Emily. "Oh no," I heard my sister whisper from behind me. "Oh, Michael, no." I turned to look at Emily, and the expression on her face told me everything. She'd figured it out. She knew it was David. "Where is David?" Emily asked loudly, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Where is your brother, Michael?" I couldn't answer, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stand there as my entire world collapsed around me. Sarah looked stricken. "Emily, please." "It's David, isn't it?" Emily's voice was getting louder, more hysterical. "That's why he's not here. That's why you can't say his name." "Emily," I said quietly, "don't." But Emily was beyond reason. She turned to address the congregation, her voice ringing through the church. "It's his brother. She's in love with his brother." The church erupted, people gasping, whispering, some standing up to get a better look at the drama unfolding at the altar. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "I'm sorry," she said to me one more time. "I'm so sorry." And then she gathered up her dress and ran. ran down the aisle, past all our family and friends, past all the shocked faces and whispered comments, out the doors of the church and out of my life. I stood there at the altar, in my black tuxedo with the white rose boutonniere my mother had pinned to my lapel that morning, watching the woman I'd planned to spend my life with disappear forever. Behind me, I could hear Emily crying. In front of me, I could see my mother's devastated face, could see Sarah's parents looking like they wanted to follow their daughter out of the church. The officiant touched my arm gently. "Son, would you like to?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm fine. Everyone can go home now." And that's how my wedding day ended. Not with "I do" and a kiss and a reception full of dancing and celebration, but with me standing alone at an altar, surrounded by wilted flowers and broken promises, watching the last of my guests file out of the church in uncomfortable silence. Everything Michael believed was a lie. The week after my non-wedding was the worst week of my life. I stayed at Mom's house because I couldn't bear to go back to my apartment, the place where Sarah and I had planned our future together, where her coffee mug still sat in the sink and her spare clothes still hung in my closet. The phone calls started immediately, friends wanting to know what happened, distant relatives who'd heard rumors and wanted the real story, vendors asking about payments and returns and what to do with all the stuff we'd ordered for a wedding that never happened. Mom handled most of it. She returned the wedding gifts, cancelled the honeymoon reservations, dealt with the caterer and the photographer. She never asked me for details about what had really happened. She just took care of everything with the quiet efficiency that had gotten our family through Dad's death years earlier. Emily stayed for a few extra days, postponing her return to Seattle. She spent most of her time sitting with me in uncomfortable silence, occasionally bringing me food I couldn't eat or suggesting activities I had no interest in. On the third day, she finally brought up what everyone was thinking. "Have you talked to David?" I was lying on my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling. "No." "Michael, you need to." "No, I don't." I sat up and looked at her. "I don't need to do anything. David made his choice, Sarah made her choice, I'm making mine." "What choice is that?" "To move on with my life and pretend none of this ever happened." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You can't just pretend. Watch me." But of course, it wasn't that simple. You can't just decide to forget the most important relationship of your adult life. You can't just pretend that your brother didn't betray you in the worst possible way. On the fourth day, David came home. I was in the kitchen when I heard his car in the driveway. Mom was at the grocery store, Emily was taking a shower, and I was alone with my thoughts and a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. David let himself in through the back door, the same way he'd been doing since we were kids. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, wearing the same clothes he'd probably been wearing for days. "Michael," he said quietly. I didn't look up from my coffee. "You need to leave. We need to talk." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do." He sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "What happened at the church? That wasn't supposed to happen." I finally looked at him. "What was supposed to happen, David? She was supposed to marry me, and then what? Continue her affair with you? Make me look like an idiot for the rest of my life?" "No," David said firmly. "She was going to end it. After the wedding, she was going to end things with me and try to make her marriage work." I stared at him. "Are you insane? You think that would have worked?" "I think she wanted it to work. She really does love you, Michael. But she loves you more." David ran his hands through his hair. "It's not about more or less. Stop saying that." I slammed my hand on the table, making both of us jump. "It is about more or less. She chose you over me. She was willing to marry me, but she was in love with you. How is that not about more or less?" David was quiet for a long moment. "You want to know the truth? The whole truth?" "I think I've heard enough truth to last me a lifetime. Sarah never wanted to hurt you. When things started between us, she tried to break up with you, multiple times, but every time she tried, you'd do something sweet or thoughtful, or she'd see how happy you were about the wedding, and she couldn't go through with it." I felt sick. So this is my fault? I was too nice to her? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying she was trapped. She felt like she'd made a commitment to you, and she didn't know how to get out of it without destroying you. So she decided to destroy me at the altar instead? She decided she couldn't live a lie anymore. She said she looked at you standing there, looking so hopeful and happy, and she realized that marrying you would be the cruelest thing she could do to both of you. I wanted to hate her for that. Wanted to be angry that she'd humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. But part of me, a small, traitorous part, was relieved that she'd been honest. Finally, brutally honest. Where is she now? I asked. I don't know, David said. She left town right after the wedding. Jessica says she's staying with a college friend in Portland, but she's not answering anyone's calls. Good. I never want to see her again. David leaned forward. Michael, I know you hate me right now. I know you probably hate me forever, but I need you to know that I never planned for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw the pain in his eyes. He was hurting too. Maybe not as much as I was, but he was genuinely suffering, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. Wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. I need you to leave, I said quietly. I need you to leave this house and not come back until I'm ready to deal with you. When will that be? I don't know, maybe never. David nodded sadly and stood up. I'm sorry, he said one more time. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. After he left, I sat alone in Mom's kitchen and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. Michael had to choose. 2 weeks after the wedding that never was, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to leave. Not just my apartment or my job or my city, I was going to leave everything behind and start over somewhere completely new, somewhere nobody knew about my humiliation, my failed engagement, my cheating brother. I'd been offered a job in Denver 6 months earlier, a marketing position with a tech startup that was looking for someone with my experience. I turned it down because Sarah didn't want to leave her family, her job at the gallery, her comfortable life. But Sarah wasn't my concern anymore. I called the company on a Tuesday morning, not really expecting them to still be interested. But apparently, they were still looking for the right person, and I was still their first choice. We can have you start in 2 weeks, the hiring manager told me. Is that too soon? That's perfect, I said. I didn't tell anyone about my plans right away. I spent a few days putting things in order, giving notice at my old job, researching apartments in Denver, figuring out the logistics of moving my entire life across the country. Emily was the first person I told. You're running away, she said when I called her in Seattle. I'm starting over. Michael, you can't just disappear. What about Mom? What about your friends? What about what? My brother who betrayed me? My ex-fiancée who's in love with him? The job where everyone knows what happened at my wedding? The apartment where I planned a future that's never going to happen? Emily was quiet for a moment. What about us? What about your family? You'll visit. I'll come back for holidays. It's not like I'm moving to Mars. It feels like you are. I understood her perspective. Emily had always been the one who kept our family together after Dad died. She was the one who made sure we stayed in touch, who organized family gatherings, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries. The idea of the family scattering across the country probably felt like another death to her. But I couldn't stay. Not in the same city where I'd see reminders of Sarah everywhere. Not in the same job where my co-workers would always remember me as the guy whose fiancée left him at the altar. Not in the same house where David and I had grown up as brothers. Mom took the news better than I expected. I think it's a good idea, she said when I told her over dinner. A fresh start might be exactly what you need. You're not upset? Of course I'm upset. I don't want my son to move so far away, but I want you to be happy more than I want you to be close. That night, Mom came to my room with a box I'd never seen before. What's this? I asked. Things of your father's that I've been saving for you. I was going to give them to you after the wedding, but... She shrugged. Seems like now is as good a time as any. Inside the box were photos, letters, his watch, a journal he'd kept during the year before he died. At the bottom was a letter addressed to me in his handwriting. He wrote letters to all 3 of you, Mom explained, to be opened when you each got married, but given the circumstances. I couldn't read the letter that night, couldn't handle any more emotional revelations, but I packed it carefully in my suitcase, along with everything else that mattered to me. 3 days before I was supposed to leave for Denver, David showed up at Mom's house again. I heard you're moving, he said. News travels fast. Michael, please don't do this. Don't leave because of me. I was packing the last of my books into boxes. I'm not leaving because of you, I'm leaving for me. It's the same thing. I stopped packing and looked at him. No, it's not. Leaving because of you would mean you still have power over my decisions. Leaving for me means I'm taking control of my own life. David sat down on my bed, looking defeated. I miss you. You should have thought about that before you slept with my fiancée. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you in the worst possible way, but you're my little brother, Michael. You're the most important person in my life. I laughed bitterly. Funny way of showing it. Let me make it up to you. Let me earn your forgiveness. How? How do you make up for betraying someone's trust? How do you earn forgiveness for something like this? David was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. But I want to try. I zipped up the box of books and set it aside. Maybe someday. But not now. Not yet. When? I don't know. Maybe never. The morning I left for Denver, the only person who came to see me off was Emily. She'd flown in from Seattle specifically to say goodbye. I still think you're making a mistake, she said as we hugged at the airport. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Promise me you'll call. Promise me you won't disappear completely. I promise. As my plane took off, I looked down at the city where I'd lived my entire life. Somewhere down there, Sarah was trying to figure out her own future. Somewhere down there, David was dealing with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere down there, Mom was probably crying over losing another piece of her family. But I was looking forward, not back. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. What happened next changed everything. Denver was everything I needed it to be, anonymous, busy, full of people who didn't know my story. I threw myself into my new job, worked long hours, made new friends who only knew me as Michael, the guy from back east who worked too much and never talked about his past. I rented a small apartment in downtown Denver with a view of the mountains. Every morning, I'd wake up and see those peaks in the distance, and I'd remember that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Emily called every Sunday, Mom called every few days. I'd started to rebuild my relationship with them, slowly and carefully. But David was still dead to me. 6 months after I moved to Denver, I finally opened the letter my father had written to me. It was a Saturday morning, and I was drinking coffee on my balcony, watching the sunrise over the Rockies. Something about the peace of that moment made me feel ready to hear whatever Dad had wanted to tell me. The letter was dated just 3 months before he died. My dear Michael, if you're reading this, it means you're about to get married, and I'm not there to see it. I'm sorry about that, son. I'm sorry I won't be there to walk you down the aisle, to give you advice about marriage, to embarrass you with a speech at your reception. But I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. You've always been the peacekeeper in our family, the one who tries to make everyone happy, the one who puts others' needs before your own. These are beautiful qualities, Michael, but they can also be dangerous ones. I worry sometimes that you're so focused on being good, on being what everyone else needs you to be, that you forget to be who you actually are. I worry that you'll settle for less than you deserve because you don't want to disappoint anyone. Marriage is hard, son. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but also the most rewarding. The key is finding someone who loves you for who you are, not who they need you to be. Someone who challenges you to be better, while accepting you exactly as you are. Don't marry someone because it's expected of you. Don't marry someone because it's safe or convenient or because everyone thinks you make a good couple. Marry someone because you can't imagine your life without them. Marry someone who makes you laugh, who makes you think, who makes you want to be the best version of yourself. And Michael? Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Don't be afraid to walk away from something that isn't right, even if walking away hurts people you care about. I love you, son. I'm proud of you, and I trust you to make the right choices for your life, even when those choices are difficult. Love always. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It was like Dad had known, somehow, what I would need to hear. Don't marry someone because it's expected of you. Don't be afraid to walk away from something that isn't right. Sarah had saved us both by walking away. She'd done what I hadn't been brave enough to do. She'd chosen honesty over comfort, truth over expectations. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I called David. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for my call for half a year. Michael? Yeah, it's me. Are you okay? Is everything all right? I'm fine. I'm good, actually. Really good. I'm glad, David said, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. I'm so glad. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay? Are you happy? Are you and Sarah happy together? There was a long pause. What kind of question is that? The kind that deserves an honest answer. Another pause. Michael, Sarah and I, we're not together. I nearly dropped the phone. What? We haven't been together since the wedding, since she left town. But I assumed, that we ran off together? That we're living some fairy tale romance? No, Michael, it doesn't work like that. What do you mean? David sighed heavily. I mean that what Sarah and I had. It was built on secrecy and guilt and the thrill of doing something forbidden. When all of that was gone, when it was out in the open, there wasn't much left. I sat down hard on my couch. So where is she? Still in Portland, as far as I know. She started therapy, got a job at a museum there. She's trying to figure out who she is when she's not living a lie. And you? I'm miserable, David said honestly. I lost the woman I thought I loved, and I lost my brother. I hurt the two most important people in my life, and for what? For an affair that couldn't survive in the light of day. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Michael, David said softly, I know I don't deserve it, but is there any chance you could ever forgive me? I thought about Dad's letter, about walking away from things that aren't right, about not being afraid to ask for what I need. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to try. David started crying then, big, ugly sobs that he didn't try to hide. I'm so sorry, he said. I'm so fucking sorry, Michael. I know you are. Can I come visit you? In Denver? I won't stay long, I miss you so much. I looked out at the mountains, at the life I'd built for myself, at the future that stretched out ahead of me like an unwritten story. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. 3 weeks later, David flew to Denver. We spent 4 days hiking in the mountains, talking about everything and nothing, slowly rebuilding the bridge between us that had been burned 6 months earlier. On his last night, we were sitting on my balcony, drinking beer and watching the sunset. I have something to tell you, David said. What? Sarah wants to see you. My heart skipped a beat. What? She's been in therapy, working through everything that happened. She wants to apologize to you in person. She wants to explain. David. I told her I'd ask you. I told her you might not be ready, might never be ready, but she wanted me to ask. I stared out at the mountains, thinking about the man I used to be and the man I was becoming. Tell her. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Tell her I'm not ready yet, but maybe someday. David nodded. That's fair. And David, the next time you talk to her, tell her something else. What? Tell her thank you. Thank you? For walking away, for being brave enough to tell the truth, for saving us both from a marriage that would have made us miserable. David looked at me with surprise. Really? Really. She did the right thing, even though it was the hardest thing. I can respect that. As I watched my brother's plane take off the next morning, I realized something important. I was going to be okay. More than okay, I was going to be happy. The vows were never meant for Sarah. They were meant for someone who didn't exist yet, someone I hadn't met yet, someone who would love me for who I actually was instead of who they needed me to be. And somewhere out there, that person was waiting for me.